Ahoy shipmates, my name is August and you are listening to the Quarterdeck Sailing Podcast. In this episode, Andy, Schell and I tackle the question, what makes the perfect offshore sailboat? Isbjørn says hi to everybody. I recorded this episode on board a boat and right now I am mixing and publishing it on another boat. So this has been a very authentic nautical production indeed. We recorded this one live in front of a YouTube audience last week. That was really fun, and you can still catch the video recording of that on our YouTube channel. So go to YouTube and search for 59 North Sailing. And while you're there, please subscribe to the channel. We got more videos planned, plus the occasional impromptu live stream. So stay tuned for that. And of course, join us on the Quarterdeck at quarterdeck.59-north.com. Hope you're all doing well out there and that December is treating you kindly. Thank you for listening to us and thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day and hold fast.
Gotta open my beer just in time.
Oh, nice. Got one here as well.
Are you on the boat?
I am, yeah. Oh well, not the boat, but a boat. I'm on Doris.
Okay.
Matthias's boat.
Nice.
So
I've also got a special cup just for you today.
Lovely. I have that same cup. They are fantastic. Very, very nice. Andy, it's good to see you. Been looking forward to this chat. How you doing?
Yeah, good. I'm excellent, actually. I just got back from the strongman session at my gym, which we took you to 2 weeks ago. Last time we did one of these live sessions, so I'm all amped up. I'm ready to go.
Very cool. Yeah, that was fun. When I was with you last time, so that's really cool. How's the container today?
It's good, man. It's muddy outside, though. I'm ready for, it's like been raining and gray for the last 10 days, and that's what the forecast looks like for the next 10 days. Like 6 degrees and just like rain. It sucks. I understand now why people leave Scandinavia in the winter. I get it.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Cheers, Skipper.
Cheers. Cheers, here you go. This beer was actually smuggled, I think, from Shetland on Isbjørn.
Hey, okay, great.
Very nice. And
well, the boat was known for smuggling, right?
That's true. That's what she does best. And I am indeed on a boat. This is my brother-in-law's sailboat called Doris, which is for sale actually. So you can have this boat if you like. So it was nice. I had to get out of the house because it's late and there's kids sleeping all over the place. So I had to get out of the house, and this was just a perfect little office studio to do this. So
awesome.
Win-win.
Well, this is. I'm excited. So we started these boat shopping live sessions during COVID. I may have even been in the hospital when Axel was born for the first one or two of those, but we had a lot of fun with those. And I think the point of this session today is, deliberately made the title a little controversial, the best boat for ocean sailing, which we are going to define today. But this is also kind of a segue into, we're going to be doing these boat shopping sessions again, where you and I just dive into a boat listing on a live session and pick it apart and teach people how to read through the broker speak, go into the history of the designer, the boat type, the build, the quality, all the rest of the stuff. It's just nerding out on boats, and that's what you and I love to do the most. So I think this will get us kind of started in the big picture to define what it is to us that makes the best boat for ocean sailing. I strategically put that nice Isbjørn picture behind my right shoulder. Just
beautiful.
For you. That's actually Isbjørn when she was at the Naval Academy, that baby blue hull. I keep telling you we should get her back to that color. It's such a neat and unique color. But that was back in the 70s when she was at the Naval Academy.
Yeah, no, she is beautiful. We even tried that at Vinda, right? Or we did a little bit of research into that possibility. Turns out putting a light blue on top of a dark blue was not the easiest project, they said. So
right.
we didn't end up doing that. But yes, no, I'm also very excited about this. And just kind of give people the big picture today. And probably not going to just list a bunch of boats, but kind of just take a step back and kind of talk about the different aspects of boats that make them good ocean sailors, so that everybody can kind of figure out their own answer to that question, right? Because, of course, there are preferences and compromises and all this stuff in this as well. But I do think we both have some strong opinions on this topic.
I'm fired up, August, because there's so many myths out there. And, you know, there's one person that I had on the podcast that I would call out by name if I remembered who it was. But I want to bust some of these myths as well. And we'll get to that, I guess. But where do you want to start? I mean, I think that I have this idea that the greater the skill of the sailor, the more sort of risk you can take in boat design, right? Like, I always use Matt Rutherford as an example. He went around the Americas in an Albin Vega 27. I don't necessarily think anybody would say that is kind of the best boat for ocean sailing, but he did it, and he's the only person in history to do it alone and nonstop. Matt is an extremely skilled sailor and knows how to take care of a boat. So you have this continuum between, like, are you taking care of the boat, or is the boat taking care of you? And I think you need to figure out where you are on that continuum. And another example, I'll call out our friend Ryan Ellison. You know, Ryan and Sophie were new to sailing when they bought Polar Seal, which was a Beneteau Oceanus 40, I think. And Ryan was a pilot and a very skilled, you know, he was into that, but he was never a sailor. He learned sailing through YouTube and got into it. And he quite quickly outgrew that boat. And I don't think anybody would say that's the best boat for ocean sailing either, but lots of people do go ocean sailing on them. But Ryan outgrew that boat because it didn't have the controls he wanted as he got to be a better sailor. It didn't have some things he wanted as he got to be a better sailor. So I think, first of all, like, figure out where you are on that continuum, because, you know, Don McIntyre's idea of the best boat for ocean sailing would be like a full keel, heavy ass attached rudder, you know, that was built in the 60s. And that's a boat that might take care of you. You know, there were several crazy stories from the first GGR, but, you know, the people on them mostly survived. So I find like that's a good starting place, is like, are you taking care of the boat, or is the boat taking care of you? And then, you know, the far end of that extreme is like these open 60 foiling Vendée Globe boats. Like, you know, you got to know what you're doing to get that thing around the world, but that's a perfect boat for that particular event with that type of sailor on board. I would not say it's the best boat for ocean sailing.
No. And it's it's a very interesting comparison you do that between the the Vendée Globe boats and these older displacement double enders, and I had a very interesting chat with Ari Hussela, who is so far the only skipper from the Nordic countries to complete the Vendée Globe, and that is going to come out.
Finland,
on
shout
the
out to Finland. Don't just lump him into the Nordic countries, August. Give him credit. Give Finland the credit they deserve.
Yes. All right. Well, yes, he's Finnish. Amazing sailor, fantastic dude. Excited for that podcast to come out soon. But
you got to say, wait. I have to give some context to this, because when you interviewed him, you filled in for me because I was sick that day and I was supposed to interview him. He was in a van way up north in Norway skiing, and he had skied for the day and he was done because it got dark. So that's how you record. And he's an airline pilot, sailed around the world, Vendée Globe. It was like so cool. Here's Ari, you know, in his little camper van on a ski tour trip up in northern Norway above the Arctic Circle.
Living his best life.
I was going to say, he's living life, man.
That was awesome. But he had a very interesting take on this whole situation where, you know, because he sailed the Vendée Globe and he's very kind of, he wasn't in there to win. He was very much a just kind of get the job done, complete the race kind of guy. And he said those boats are amazing and very safe, and it was very critical about these retro races that's going on, and called them unsafe. And the reason why, one of the points that he brought up, was that you are just completely at the mercy of the weather in these slower, you know, solid, heavy displacement boats, because you can't outmaneuver weather at all. Whereas the Vendée Globe boats doing 25 knot planes down in these big lows, you can kind of position yourself in a much better way. And also, the faster, more aggressive Vendée boat is just going to spend, 2/3 less time out in the ocean than the displacement boat. So that was kind of an interesting take from him. And I do think that is one of the myths, I guess, or I would call it a myth. I'm sure many will disagree with me with this. like if you do ask, like what kind of boat should I get for offshore, ocean sailing, passage making? A lot of people will say that, oh, you gotta get like a really heavy, displacement, full keel, double ender, conservative rigged boat. I think that is a mistake. I think that is the wrong answer for almost everybody. Would you agree?
So what I will agree with is that I do agree with your point that is a myth. I do think it's a myth that that's the best boat for ocean sailing. I think some of this comes down to personal preference, obviously. Jojo just popped up in the chat, said long keel, gaff cutter, low tech, easy to fix for cruising around the world. That's the perfect boat for Jojo. Jojo's one of our skippers. She loves that old school classic stuff. I know some guys, Brian Duff sails these weird old boats, and like that's a boat that fits the character of the person for sure. So you can't define the best boat for ocean sailing without first defining the person. But generally speaking, I do agree with you that is a myth, and I think if you're going into this knowing what you have, because that's what you want, that's one thing. But if you're going into this looking for the best boat for ocean cruising, let's define that anyway, ocean cruising. I also think I would kind of push back on Ari a little bit, because you're not in your average cruising boat, even a boat like Falcon, which is big and fast, you're still not really outrunning weather. Like, you're only outrunning weather systems on a freaking Vendée Globe boat, and like that's not realistic. So you're not.
Yeah, no, that comparison doesn't apply to most people.
No, he's not wrong. But so I think, to me, and this is, I have evolved over the years. Actually, I used to be like that. I mean, my first boat was Arcturus, was a full keel, attached rudder, yawl rig. Like that at the time, that was my idea of the best boat for ocean sailing. And now I've got Falcon and built that out, and that couldn't be any different. It's a modern, very thin fin keel, flat bottom, goes fast, spade rudder, and I think I'm definitely more on that side of the table now than the Arcturus side of the table. And I love, this was going to come up at some point, but I love Bob Perry's kind of pushing back on this idea that you got to have a fin keel and a skeg hung rudder, and he often says that the rudder is what's holding the skeg on and not vice versa, and it all comes down to engineering. So I think like a properly engineered spade rudder is a better choice than a skeg or full keel rudder, because it makes it easier to drive the boat. It makes the autopilot easier to steer offshore, makes the wind vane easier to steer. But like the properly designed and built is the caveat there, because most people think of spade rudder as these modern production boats that aren't really designed and built to cross oceans. People do it on them all the time. Again, that's not this conversation, but they don't. They're not designed for that, so they fail a lot more easily than, say, a Valiant 42. Bob Perry is one of his designs that has a fin keel and a spade rudder that is properly designed and built. So I think that's the biggest other myth here, is that you have to look at not just the design of the boat, but what was it designed for? What was the design brief? And then how was that design brief executed in the
Yeah, absolutely. It's of course tons of there are great fin keel boats and bad fin keel boats and everywhere all around. I'm getting there's a lot of love for full keels in the comments. I'd love to see that. I'll explain a little bit of why I said that I think that's the bad choice for most people. I think because a lot of people think when they want to go offshore, they want something that is super safe, and I agree with that. I think if you get a big, heavy, full keel double ender with a little stubby mast, that is the best boat. If you end up in a big storm, that is the boat that I would want to be on for sure.
A Colin Archer pilot boat type.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with that, and that also applies to if you hit a reef, hit a container, all this kind of stuff, right? You would rather have a big heavy hull with the full keel. But I just think that you're just not going to end up in those situations very often. It is very, very rare that you, especially now with modern weather forecasting and seasonal sailing that we do and that how accessible information is right now, it is just a very, very low chance that you'll actually end up in that situation. And
you're talking like a survival storm situation, like a serious, gnarly, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, to put that in perspective, August,
bad.
we have sailed at 59 North to pretty exotic places. Over 170,000 miles is the count that our boats have sailed on collectively. And knock on wood, have had plenty of heavy weather, but nothing like what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I guess my big point is that when you do go offshore to go ocean sailing, you will almost always wish for more wind, and almost never, at least for myself, I just like very, very seldom that I actually wish that it would blow less. Almost always, I just want more wind.
That was Moitessier's thing. He always said he put really big masts on Joshua because his line in one of his books was, you can always reef the sails, but you can never raise your mast.
Yes, tall masts, or I would say that's like the first really, I think, non-controversial, or it probably is controversial, but the kind of easiest black and white thing that I would say is just get as tall a mast as you can possibly get on your boat for an
Well, if you want to put that into numbers, some people were talking about numbers. You have. I always look at sail area to displacement. That's basically the power to weight ratio. And anything less than 15 is just off my list. It's why I'm freaking out and going to buy a new mast for Spica, because her default sail area displacement is like 13 and a half. I think 17 to 19 is the sweet spot for that, because you can always reef and you get a lot more performance out of a boat that's got numbers like that. You get up and over 20 and now you're reefing a lot. Like Falcon, I think, is 22, and we're almost always reefed on that boat. The wind goes over 12 knots apparent, it's like throw a reef in. So that's getting a little bit on the extreme side. But I think like 17-ish is like the sweet spot for that number. And that's, like you said, a measure of the mast height and sail area and the boat's displacement.
Yeah, it's beyond 17, I think.
It's about that.
Yeah. So yeah, great number.
So somebody in the chat here said, I didn't say I don't like skeg hung rudder. I said what Bob Perry said, that he said a lot of skeg hung rudders, it's the skeg that's holding the rudder on. I didn't say that. But I do think it's a myth that people for some reason think the skeg is going to protect the rudder in a collision or something. I don't know that that's true. I don't buy that, because the keel's not that far in front of the rudder. Whatever you hit's going to hit the keel first. The orca thing is separate conversation. Let's leave that out. Somebody mentioned that in the chat as well. That is, if you're sailing in Portugal, that might be a consideration. But let's just assume we can avoid that area.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate a little bit on the mast height sail area thing, because a lot of people will think, if they haven't gone offshore a lot, they might think that it's fine just sailing slow. You're not out there to race. You're going to sail across the Atlantic, and you want to just enjoy being in the moment and think, oh well, I'll just go. If I go 2.5 knots, that's 3 knots. That's fine by me. But that is not how it works out in the ocean. If you sailing on a bay or in a fjord or whatever, that might be fine. So very little wind, and you're just like ghosting along at 2 knots and having a blast. But I mean, the biggest difference between coastal sailing and offshore sailing is the waves. There's like always waves and swell, and you're just not going to be able to sail that slowly. You're going to need a lot more power to keep the boat on track from not just getting stalling in the waves, and to keep the sails standing and not flopping and flogging around. And so you're going to need a lot more power than you might think out in the ocean just to get somewhere.
I think, if you listen to any of the podcasts we talk about getting a new mast on Spica, I couldn't agree with you more. I think so. If we say the first myth is this kind of design, rudder thing, whatever, I think the design matters less than the way that what the design was for and how the design was executed. So I think that's most important on that. I want to talk about this idea that somehow fin keels are just not safe and you have to have an encapsulated keel, which I think is just has gotten blown way out of proportion with some of these high-profile keel failures. Namely, Cheeky Rafiki, probably the worst one, the boat that lost its keel. All 4 of the crew died in the middle of the Atlantic. Another high-profile one, there was an Oyster 85 that lost its keel in the Mediterranean. The boat flipped over and sank. That's like, yeah, no bueno. That shouldn't happen. Now, Cheeky Rafiki is an interesting story because I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a great boat for ocean sailing. It's Beneteau first. We'll come back to that. But this idea that you have to have an encapsulated keel, and I forget who it was, but somebody was on the podcast back in, and I don't mean to be mean about this. I was fun. I like those guys. I forget who it was. I'll look it up later. But they were on with Ryan and Sophie and the two of them, and we talked about this. And they had an encapsulated keel on their boat. I forget what kind of boat it was. But the encapsulated keel, what I'm talking about here is a keel that is basically inside the fiberglass structure of the boat. So you have like the hull, and the fiberglass makes the keel shape, and then the keel is filled with either lead or different materials. And then so it doesn't rely on the keel bolts to hold it to the hull. It's integral to the hull. And it is, generally speaking, maybe a stronger way to build a keel. But when you put iron inside of an encapsulated keel, which often was the case on these older boat designs, as soon as you break that seal, if you ground a little bit hard one time or whatever, guess what happens when iron is exposed to seawater, August?
It rusts.
It rusts. And what happens when metal rusts?
It's destroyed.
It expands, and when it expands inside an encapsulated keel, it now cracks the keel, and you have a major, major, major problem on your hands. I think, again, same way with a spade rudder is not inherently bad, nor is a fin keel that's bolted on. It's how it's built and how it's bolted on. We'll use that Beneteau example again. A lot of modern production boats are built with a hull and then an internal grid that is just kind of glued to the hull. And the keel is bolted into that. And that is not as good as a boat like Eastbjorn or Falcon, where you have these fiberglass stringers that run athwartships to create this very strong keel floor. Eastbjorn actually has a steel I-beam in the center there. X-Yachts builds like a steel grid inside their boats as well. And the keel is bolted to that, and it's an integral part of the structure. That's a much different fin keel design and execution than your Bavaria or whatever. Pick your coastal cruiser of choice. So I'm gonna debunk that, bust that myth right now that a fin keel is not bad. It's actually preferable, in my opinion, because of the maneuverability, the handling, the motion, all the rest of that stuff. I think that is just definitely better than anything else. Kraken Yachts, I shouldn't have used them by name, no free advertising, but they've built their entire marketing platform on this idea that you need to have an encapsulated keel and a few other things. And I just flat out, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. No, yeah, me too. These, if you build a fin keel properly, it's going to be just as safe as an encapsulated keel. I think it was when at some point we had Eastbjorn in refit, we talked to Lostrom, the Swan professor, about removing the keel to inspect the keel boats. And he said, just to forget it. You're just not going to be able to get it off. Like, even at a professional yard, that keel is just not going to come off, even if you try your best. Yeah, no, it's definitely. But there's huge differences. On Eastbjorn and some of these older designs, you also have there's a keel stub, right? So the kind of mold of the hull starts the keel construction a little bit, and then you have just tons of bolts and glue and everything keeping that. And
typically that keel stump you're talking about is sort of stepped, and that's what creates the deep bilge. So the lead part of the keel that's bolted on the bottom has a step in it as well. So the aft end is lower than the forward end, and that's what creates your deep bilge sump, basically. That's like Eastbjorn has that right at the bottom of the companionway steps. Falcon does not, because Falcon's fin keel is just bolted onto the bottom of the canoe-shaped hull, which is generally what you see, and it's very shallow bilges.
Yeah, that's right.
So if we're defining the best boat for ocean sailing, August, would you have fin keel, encapsulated keel, full keel?
I would have a fin keel.
Yeah, same.
A non-encapsulated fin keel, I think, is great. And fin keels, there are some concerns about collisions in the chat. They're from James and others, which is a fair concern. But bolt-on lead keels are actually very, very sturdy when it comes to collisions. Not only because if they are bolted on properly, but also the lead is like a very good kind of crumple, works as a crumple zone in a modern car does. It deforms very easily and absorbs a lot more force than you would think. But yeah, no, that would be my choice. I think for for safety and collisions and all that, the full keel would be preferable. But again, the sailing characteristics of that would be, I wouldn't want that. We also, like, one thing is the heavy displacement and all that, but we didn't mention that full keels just goes to weather a lot worse than what a fin keel does. Like, you're losing probably like 10 degrees at least on the wind with a full keel versus a proper fin keel.
Back to what you're talking about.
There are boats out there that doesn't really fit any of these definitions, right? It was have somewhere in between a full and a fin and all that. So yeah, but generally, yes.
Like you said, we're trying to define our idea of the best boat for ocean sailing, not the best boat to ground on a reef or the best boat to survive a storm. It's just the best boat for normal trade winds type round the world ocean sailing, I think, is the definition here. That's at least my definition.
Yes.
Where were we here? I'm looking at some of these comments in the chat. I think, to your point about like the tacking angles and the boat speed. So when you're talking about passage making, right? Like 5 degrees of tacking angle over a 5-10 day passage, if it's upwind, is going to add a lot of distance. Same thing, a half a knot of boat speed doesn't sound like a lot, but that's, you add up over 24 hours, that's 12 miles a day. You go for 5 days, that's 60 miles. That's going to get you a day later to where you're going in 5-day trip. So it does make a big difference because those small things add up over time in a way that they don't when you're coastal sailing.
Yeah. I had a proper full keel boat for many years.
I want to hang on a second. James just said flat bottom boats with fin keels are terribly uncomfortable when having to sail upwind. James, you're not talking about our trip from Greenland to Iceland, are you? That wasn't uncomfortable at all in Falcon, which is a flat bottom boat that sailed upwind in heavy weather between Greenland and Iceland. James was on board for that. So yeah, shout out to James. I can't, you're not wrong, I have to say.
Yeah, that is, it's a really good point there. I'll just finish my thought about the full keeler that I had, the Storfidra 1025 that I had.
Tell us the name. Tell us the name of it again, please. My favorite boat name ever. And what does Skalken mean?
It's the end piece of a bread loaf, because that was like what it reminded me of when I saw it out of the water. It just looked like the end piece of a loaf of bread, and that is, that's telling you a lot about the whole shape of that boat.
There you go.
And very, very heavy displacement and double ender as well, and it was just found myself just starting the engine a lot more than I had in other, boats that I've had, just because you wouldn't point high enough and you just needed so much wind to get going. So that is something I think you would end up, if you go the very conservative route, I think you're going to need a big and heavy under-rigged boat for safety. I think you're just going to find that you're going to be ending up motoring a lot more than you would otherwise.
So back to our design choices. We talked about rudders, but we skipped over the choice. So we said fin keel. Would you go with an attached rudder, a skeg-mounted rudder, or a balanced spade rudder?
I don't think the skegs really matter that much. I don't think so. I think the balanced, everything else being equal, a balanced spade would be my choice.
I 100% agree with you, because what a balanced rudder does, when you talk about a balanced rudder, it's going to be hard to do this audio, but a balanced rudder has the rudder post, and the majority of the rudder blade is aft of the rudder post, but there's a small portion of it that is forward of the rudder post. So as you turn that rudder, the portion that projects forward is projected into the water stream, and that actually helps you turn. It's like power steering, but mechanical. So it actually makes it easier to helm the boat than a skeg rudder or a rudder that's attached to the back of the keel is basically a barn door, which as soon as you're turning it, you're now putting the brakes on, and the force of the water is just trying to put the rudder back in the center line. So, and I think, as boat design and construction evolved, it's just like masts, right? Like the reason we had gaff masts on like the old J-class yachts is they didn't have the technologies and the materials science to build a mast that was tall enough to keep it standing upright without falling over. And now we do. I don't think anybody would say like a gaff, except for maybe JoJo, that a gaff rig is better than a Bermuda rig. It's certainly not simpler. Well, okay, I'm not going to make that argument. Bottom line is technology has evolved, right? And like, I think this idea that a skeg rudder or whatever is just it's like that's old technology. It's old, maybe was the best thing back then. But now with, Falcon's rudder stock is like 12 inches around carbon fiber. Well, that didn't exist back in the 70s and 80s. And now it does. And now you can build a very robust rudder stock that is, I know James is, shout out to Sailor James again. How many times have you repaired or replaced your rudder, James? Not to tease you, I'm just kidding. But I think the fact that we can evolve that, and actually you look at like some people have made really neat upgrades to older boats. I know there was another S&S Swan 44 guy that had put a new keel, a thinner keel, longer keel, and a spade rudder in a boat. Got rid of the skeg and modified the whole thing and basically modernized it slightly and transformed the boat. Same thing. There's a racing boat called Hound. It's like a aluminum 60-something foot. I don't think it's S&S, but it looks like S&S. I forget the designer. But that boat's had 3 or 4 different keel iterations over the years and rudder iterations. And like, that's what you'd evolve to. If you had the choice on Eastbjorn, you'd do the same thing because it makes for a better sailing boat. James, bro. Sorry, man. You keep putting these comments up here. I can't.
This is great.
60-year-old wooden rudder. I know. But remember, this was meant to be a controversial conversation, so I'm allowed to take the piss a little bit here.
This is great. This is great for the views. This is great. Thank you, James. This is what we want to do here.
We said for the thumbnail for this, we're going to put August in a bikini for the clicks.
Right. If we get 100 likes, I will dress up in my bikini. No, I think James is making a lot of really good points here, and this point about flat bottom boats with fin keels having trouble sailing upwind is, I think, very true. And it is sort of a that's kind of what you'll get if you buy like a modern production boat now. That's like almost one thing that you need to decide when you go into this is like, do you want a modern boat or do you want an older boat? Because with very few exceptions, all these new boats kind of have the same look and overall design features now with these, massive wide stern. Somebody figured out that your boat will go a lot faster downwind if you make the stern super wide and flat and turn it into a surfboard. And all the racers like that, flying in downwind around the world. And then you need to add a lot of buoyancy. So you add a lot of buoyancy to the bow to keep the boat in trim. And now you have this very bluff bow up front. And that means a very, very flat underside, which goes great downwind and has a lot of stability, like form stability. It's great because it's just a big flat hull. And also, for the cruisers, everybody loved this because now you have these massive, enormous owner cabins everywhere, right? So much interior space. It's fantastic. And so there's a lot of great things about that whole trend. But what is not great about that is that you don't have that fine bow or that forefoot that can kind of punch through waves, and you'll have pounding going into the winds, it can be very uncomfortable.
Everything's a trade-off though, right? Like, so would you trade that discomfort upwind, which, generally speaking, gentlemen don't sail to windward, August. You can't always avoid it. Obviously, you need a boat that can go to weather, but do you want to trade that for the ability to surf easily and have much easier helming downwind? Like I know you've sailed Eastbjorn in heavy downwind seas, and she's a handful on the helm because the boat doesn't want to surf that easily, and you've got a ton of weather helm. She wants to round up, so you're trading that off. She will surf. I think my record on Eastbjorn was 14 and a half knots coming across the Atlantic, but it takes a big wave to get her going and a little bit of sail up. Versus Falcon, she'll surf. Falcon is a relatively conservative beam in the aft end compared to modern boats, and we didn't even get on the subject of twin rudders. which a lot of these modern boats now, they're so beamy at the stern, they have to have twin rudders because as they heel, the rudder just comes out of the water if it's in the center. We can come back to that maybe, but I don't know. Like I often say too, like when it's shitty weather and you're uncomfortable, the best thing to make an uncomfortable passage more kind of tolerable is going fast in the right direction. Like if you're going fast in the right direction, I'll take a lot of discomfort for that. Though that being said, I admit that I sleep in the aftermost cabin on Falcon. So I saw Jim Butler in the chat here as well. He usually takes the forwardmost bunk on the upper side. And, he might have a different opinion of that when you're going to windward and he's airborne half the time. But I think that's part you have to think about. It's like, am I going to go fast in the right direction? And if it does get so bad, you just heave to, like we did several times on Falcon on that same Iceland passage. But the ability to surf fast downwind, it's also really fun. And it's just easier to drive. So it's like one thing for the other. What are you going to trade off? And I think to define what you're specifically talking about, you say the 4-foot. That's the hull shape from the keel forward to the bow. Is it round? Is it flat? Is it a V shape? Eastbjorn, it's a V shape. Falcon, it's relatively more like U-shaped, which has a flat section on the bottom. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, Falcon is not bad in that regard, but I think on the downwind side of things, it's fun to sail a surfboard downwind like that. That is a lot of fun. But if you get into like the really, really heavy stuff and it kind of gets a little scary, I much prefer something like Isbjørn than something with, this modern production design with a super wide stern and lots of freeboard and a bow that's just completely cut off. Because what I find, like if you're helming downwind, if you're running from a storm, and we're talking like really heavy, like survival types of situations here. I've been in a few of those, and both with Isbjørn like hulls and flatter and wider ones, and I find that all of that buoyancy in the stern and just the wideness, when those waves come in behind you and break over the stern or like below the stern, it'll just throw you off so easily. It's very hard to keep track and to point the boat downwind, which is that's what you need to do, right? That is how you survive big weather, is to point the bow downwind. And not only that, but also when you're going down, surfing down the waves, and that bow kind of plunges into the bottom of the wave, there's so much drag immediately in the bow because there's so much stuff there. And you don't want drag at the very, very front of the boat. That's going to throw you off really easily. I've had, and that might be just bad boats that I've sailed, but they've been like that, wide, flat, twin rudders, and I've found it very uncomfortable and very twitchy to control compared to Isbjørn. I haven't seen like really survival type of stuff on Isbjørn, but I had that Baltic 37 that I definitely did, which is a very, very similar design. So
yeah, I'm getting a lot of weird static in my headphones. Are you getting that?
It's raining. That might be on me. Sorry.
Oh, wow. That's rain. Wow. Okay. It must be really raining.
It is.
Cool.
It's actually pouring now. Again, for you that might have joined us later on, I am on board a boat. My brother-in-law's Finnsailor 38, Fiskars Finnsailor 38 is a very horrible day out there.
Okay. Where do we go from here? So, all right, let's make a choice. Do you want a flat hull, flat 4-foot, or do you want a V-shaped 4-foot?
I want a V-shaped one. I want a sharp bow to punch through the waves and to not put the brakes on when I go down big, massive seas.
I would have definitely said that, and I don't know what I would say now. I've gotten a little bit spoiled sailing Falcon, and like I said, my taste in boats has evolved, and I don't know. I think if I'm going to define the best boat for ocean sailing all around, I probably would say agree with you, but it would be very close. It would be very close. I might go somewhere in the middle. Like I'm thinking one of my all-time favorite designs that I've never actually sailed. I was aboard one in San Francisco recently. We were there, but and they're old, from the 60s, the Cal 40. Cal 40 was like a revolutionary design when it came out. Had a canoe-shaped hull, basically, but conservative, still similar proportions where you had long overhangs, relatively speaking, shorter than most boats of the era, but not beamy at the stern, had a spade rudder all the way aft. This was a boat that was designed in the 60s. Spade rudder all the way aft, long fin keel, and those boats are still really, really awesome boats. They will surf down waves, but they were easy to manage. It's kind of a hybrid between a hull like Eastbjorn and Falcon, but that was designed in the 60s. So I'd probably lean towards something like that, less extreme than Falcon, but maybe a little bit slipperier than a boat like Eastbjorn. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say a boat like, I mean, we're going to end up defining Eastbjorn. I knew that was going to happen, like, because I mean, this is why we picked that boat in the first place. But I'm stuck in this conundrum right now. Like, you know, we talked about this when I bought Spica, the OE36. That's very, if you looked at the boat out of the water, you probably wouldn't be able to tell it apart from Eastbjorn. It's very similar. But having sailed Spica, my Norleen 34, which is a more closer to Falcon, closer to that Cal 40 design, I've gotten a little spoiled.
Yeah.
So I don't know, because I really like the performance gains that you get with a slightly more slipperier hull shape.
Yeah. It's important to, I'm trying to comparing my own experiences, and I'm just very aware of how boat size will affect how you feel about things. Like, I think, because that is like a bigger boat is just going to, sail better, be faster. It'll make the waves smaller, and it's just like it's like one way you can actually make the swells and the waves out in the ocean smaller is to get a bigger boat.
Yeah,
so I'm very aware of that.
Yeah, but like you can't. Then it's just harder to deal with. I actually think I've joked about this, but most of the professional sailors that I know, myself included, that professionally sail on big boats like 60 feet and up, if they own a boat personally at all, and many of them don't because they're smarter than that, they're often like 40 feet or less. And I think that's saying something, because it's a pain in the ass and it's expensive to deal with big boats. I think even think Eastbjorn would be a boat. Like, I wouldn't necessarily want a boat like Eastbjorn if Mia and I go cruising with Axel in 5 years. Eastbjorn would be as big of a boat as I would want. And like, we might just do it on Spica because like it's big enough. But I think one comment here, again, shout out to Sailor James. He said in the chat, and I think this is dead on accurate, thoughts on best boat for ocean sailing is very different from best boat for long distance cruising. It is. And this conversation is the best boat for ocean sailing. None of it, we're not talking about sitting at anchor. We're not getting into that, because those are contradictory things. The best boat for long distance cruising might well be a catamaran because of the time you spend on anchor. But I would never choose that for long distance ocean sailing, and that's what we're talking about today. So very good distinction.
Absolutely. And that probably applies to the size and maintenance thing as well, right? Because
true, that's true.
The maintenance fixing, although not really, because you might end up, if you're in a situation where you need to change your sails or reef or do repairs underway, it is good to have something that you can manage. Right, there was this story recently about this couple who, at least one of them passed away because they had to turn the boat with this enormous 70-foot something, and they had to turn into the wind to reef the sails, and everything went to hell. So I think that does apply to the ocean sailing part of it, like buying a boat that's not bigger than you can handle with the crew that you have available.
So I know you didn't want to get into this, but we've got about 10 minutes left here. We have to pick some designs. Like, let's talk specifics now. Top 5. Can you rattle off a top 5 of your favorite boats? Your idea of best boats for ocean sailing, if we're going to be specific.
All right. Do you want to do one each?
Sure, we'll go back and forth.
All right.
And you can do it in order or not. I'm not sure I'll be able to put these in order, because we didn't prepare for this question. But I have a list in my head.
I'll definitely choose the SNS Swan 48 as my. This is the best boat that I have sailed.
The best boat for I can't disagree with that. I would. Of boats that I've sailed, are we going to qualify this that you have to have sailed it?
No, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think let's go outside those bounds, because I haven't sailed all these boats. But of the boats I've sailed, I think probably My favorite one would have to have been, besides Eastbjorn, because I do think that's the right answer, but we're both pretty biased. I think the Outbound 46 is probably the boat I recommend most to people looking for a good ocean sailing boat. Really, really, really cool. Kind of modern hull, but conservative shape. Nothing is overblown. I think that's the key to this stuff too. Like, nothing's exaggerated, right? It looks right. I think there's, whoever said if it looks right, if it looks good, it sails good. I'm sure there's somebody that said that, but Outbound 46 is high. It's definitely in my top 5. That had a spade rudder and a fin keel, but relatively, kind of conservative in its dimensions, and sailed. We hit 15 and a half knots going to the Caribbean. Good size, really, really good boat.
Very cool. Very cool.
What's your next one? Pick another one.
Think I want to go with the Hallberg Rassi. Not sure quite which one of them, but there is a great number of them in that kind of 40 foot range, right? I think those are fantastic.
Also on my list, I sailed the Hallberg Rassi 43 out to Bermuda and back, and same thing. Really, really great. Just everything was kind of just right. I mean, and that's also like one of the all-time best built boats and designed boats, German Freers. Like they're high quality. So I would say that as well. I'm going to go off brand here a little bit, and another of the coolest boats I've sailed offshore is a Mason 44, and that's that's a full keel boat. But boy, oh boy, is that done right. And somebody else in the chat mentioned they had a Gale Force 34. Also, really cool boat. Mia and I looked at one of them in Annapolis before we bought Arcturus. But like, to me, if you're gonna go out of the bounds of what we defined, right? Anything that's like properly designed and executed is gonna work, no matter what we're talking about here. And like a full keel boat, like a Gale Force or like a Mason 44, that is properly designed and executed, is gonna work. And that Mason 44. Man, that thing was like a freight train. It very similar feel to Eastbjorn. Harder to maneuver around the dock, but we're talking about ocean sailing here. So that thing was awesome. I really enjoyed that boat. And like, to me, you can't separate, and the reason Eastbjorn wins this discussion for us, I think, is you can't separate sailing quality from the way the boat looks. It just, you won't be able to do that for me. It has to have both. And that's why that Outbound sailed really, really well, but it's not going to be at the top of my list because it looks fine, but it's not, Mason and the Swan 48, they're like really, really nice looking boats.
Yeah. I think Tom Culliff has a Mason 44, I believe.
He does, and he would be a good person to take advice from.
He knows what he's talking about, for sure.
A Gale Force is a rare boat. It's built by Kaiser, so Kaiser with a K. Kaiser Gale Force 34. Look it up. They're very cool.
Yeah, those are great. I gotta say the Baltic 37.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
I put her on that list. It's almost, she's so similar to Eastbjorn that it almost is a little bit cheating almost. It's because that's the boat that has spent a lot of miles sailing, and it's very similar to Eastbjorn, a little bit more racy than she is, but also a lot shorter. But that was a really, really great boat. Huge rig, very deep, fin keel, super fast, but very, very IOR in her lines. And
fat in the middle, skinny at the back.
Yes.
So I said this already, so we don't talk about too much, but the Cal 40 is on my list for sure. I've never actually sailed one, but I mean, talk about people that, accomplished sailors that own boats. What's the guy's name? Stan Honey. Stan Honey owns a Cal 40 and races it. And Stan Honey was like the navigator on Comanche. He's like big time. He's the guy that invented the yellow first down line in American football and like the America's Cup graphic overlays. He's a sailor, but also like a TV production guy. Really interesting guy. High on my list to get on the podcast. But he owns a Cal 40 and like for good reason because they're awesome boats. And I would say, skipping over that, I would say another, like, I think any of Bob Perry's designs are, because I really like Bob Perry's design philosophy. So I sailed a Saga 43. We did a complete Atlantic Circle on a Saga 43. We were with the owner. Awesome boat to sail. Really good, kind of narrow fin keel, spade rudder. They weren't built particularly great, so there's some things to look out for there, but really good design. And I think his probably best known and most recognized boat for ocean sailing is the Valiant, like the Valiant range, Valiant 40, Valiant 42. Matt Rutherford always joked on his Around the Americas trip, like, yeah, if I had a Valiant 42, I would have rather had that. And now he's getting one for his next big figure eight voyage. So that tells you something as well. Matt Rutherford's quite accomplished, knows a lot about this stuff. Chose a Valiant 42. Again, fin keel, spade rudder, similar. It's a double ender. It's a round stern. But if you look at the hull shape under the waterline, actually very similar to the Cal 40.
Very cool. Yeah, that's nice. I will choose, I think one boat that I really like is the Contessa 32.
Yep. That was the boat Kretschmer sailed around Cape Horn.
On my list. Oh, it was? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Cape Horn to starboard was in, I think it's still this to this day, the smallest boat to go that direction around the Horn from east to west.
Oh, very cool. Did he really? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. I was thinking about Jarle Ande. I think he did it in an Albin Vega, I think. But I think he sank halfway through the attempt. So I don't think that counts.
The Cal 40 you're thinking of is Liz Clark. Liz Clark sails a Cal 40. Somebody in the chat mentioned that. All right, let's pick one more. Man, I kind of went through my list there. Maybe we can leave it at that. Do you have any more that come to mind if we're doing a top 5?
I have been one kind of boat that I've been dreaming about for years is the Hutting yachts out of the Netherlands. They make these gorgeous, beautifully customized aluminum blue water boats. I've never sailed one, but if I do kind of go boat shopping and kind of dreaming a little bit, I will look into those because they look just absolutely wonderful.
Well, if we're going to do that, then I'll add the best ever 53 to my list for the same reason. Freaking so cool.
Right.
Gerard Dijkstra designed it for himself. He sailed in the Whitbread back in the 70s, the early Whitbreads. I met him on his own best ever 53 in Iceland when we sailed down from Svalbard, and hands down the coolest boat I've ever been on. Coolest looking boat, looks like a sailor's Jeep or something, but like fin keels. I mean, proper. Just so cool. And so cool. I mean, and so simple. I mean, he designed it for himself to go cruising on. Didn't even have pressure water on it. Like, no, like nothing. Because he's just used to like the old school stuff. Like, super simple, built for 2 people. I mean, incredibly cool looking.
That is that's true. We didn't really talk about hull material or get into the fiberglass wood metal discussion, but I have taken quite a few of these kind of expedition-y boats at the ocean, like the Ovnis, and with the and I gotta say they sail really well. I've been very pleased with also with the upwind performance of those boats.
So the Ovnis in particular have like no keel. It's just a centerboard. It's a round hull shape with a centerboard, and they get a lot of their stability from the form stability of the hull. So we didn't get into a lot of those details, but I think the point is, especially on construction as well. Again, what I started this with, if it was designed and built correctly, it doesn't really matter what. Like a cold molded boat is every bit as good, probably better in a lot of senses than fiberglass. A fiberglass boat like Spica, the old Norleen 34, part of the reason we sold that is because it had a balsa core in the hull. And like it was old, and you start putting holes in that, now you got rotten balsa core, and that's just like, I won't buy a boat again that has had balsa core in it. It's just not good enough. So I think the question is it designed and built properly? Then I think the material choices are less important.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. Somebody asked in the comments, I can't find it again, but whether the ability to heave to should be taken into consideration.
All boats heave to, just some of them require a little more finesse than others.
Yeah, do they though? Like, do these? I've like these kind of super wide, flat, modern designs. Do they really heave? I haven't really been able to do that very well.
I haven't tried, but yeah.
It's, well, I mean, yes, they all heave to, but in the kind of in the way they will actually drift directly downwind. They kind of stay there, but I think going directly downwind and creating this famous kind of slick behind the boat to keep waves from breaking, and in such a way that you can just kind of leave the boat completely.
Yeah. That's a whole other live session on heavy weather tactics.
Yeah, that's right. We should do that sometime. But that is, of course, I would say another strength of the full keel heavy displacement boat is that they will heave to easier or better generally than fin keels designs.
Well, Skipper, it's 10 o'clock p.m. here in Sweden, and I'm going to have a 5 a.m. wake-up call from my 5-year-old Axel, so I think it's time to wrap this up, even though I could sit here all night and talk about this. Super fun. Thank you guys for joining in the chat. This was excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. This was fantastic. Thank you, everybody in the chat who participated. Everybody who's been watching. Thanks for finding the right stream. Sorry about the hiccups at the beginning there. We're just getting better at this every time. So next time, this is going to be super smooth. So great. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
All right. Talk to you later, Skipper.
Talk to you later.
Until next
Heave ho and hold fast.
I ruined that one. Well done. All right.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to join the Quarterdeck, go to quarterdeck.59-north.com. The Quarterdeck podcast is produced by August Sandberg for 59 North. Music is by the Storm Weather Shanty Choir.